Welcome to Anxiety Simplified podcast. I'm Joanne Williams, and we're here to share some compelling strategies I've used in my 30 years as a licensed mental health professional with my clients with success that I hope will help you and make your life just a little easier, having less anxiety and more confidence. Bringing this right into your own home. So sit back and listen and use these strategies in your day. So, summary of today is what is a psychopath or a narcissistic personality disorder or antisocial personality disorder? Are these all the same? So, the question is, can a psychopath be treated? Is there kind of hope? So, how do you create a psychopath? Never say no to them or never set any boundaries with them. That is the real simple answer here. But this really is a cautionary tale for parents and society, and why boundaries and saying no appropriately is so important for a functioning society. As I said earlier, as a mental health professional, I have dealt with all kinds of people and family dynamics, and I would usually see this family with bringing in children or the family kind of traumatized because one child, and it's unfortunately usually male, is so out of control that they're at their wits' end. They don't know what to do. And I'll tell you, as a professional, there's really not a lot that can be offered when it is that out of control. Please bring them in early, because at that point, the child is in charge. They're not going to sit there and listen to this person tell them or put any boundaries down. They don't have to. The parents and the siblings are really held hostage to these behaviors of this out of control child or young adult. And without any of the family members having the skills or having built these skills through time and saying no or setting appropriate boundaries, even as a young child when it really needs to happen, this young adult has really become dangerous. Can be revengeful, and then it's the police, authorities, or somebody with more authority has to be brought in to help. And that is what I really see as what you really call them antisocial personality disorder. They have to have someone saying no to them that is bigger than them. And unfortunately, usually it's the parents that are blaming the child instead of taking the responsibility of what was needed to prevent this. And this is how generations can perpetuate antisocial personalities or behaviors, because no one learned appropriate social skills. There are preventable outcomes and preventable outcomes and unpreventable outcomes with our children. But guaranteed, you will screw up your kids. That's just the way it is about something for sure. So don't think that you have to be perfect parent to prevent creating a sociopath. This is different. This is preventable. These boundaries are learned, and they're developmental milestones of behavior that start even as young as age 2 is really when they're supposed to be starting to learn this. This is when the child starts to understand that they're separate from their parents and they test boundaries. We call them the terrible twos, as you may have heard. But this is a developmental stage of hearing no, the parents being together and consistent with the child until that child understands this is as far as that child can go safely. Saying no is showing that you care enough to take the time to teach your child what it is to have give and take in a relationship and know what love is. That is truly showing love when you say no. You're taking the time to care to say no. Then again, in teenage years, they can go through the same developmental stage. Hopefully they learn at age 2, and the teenage years will be much easier. You're not recreating this whole developmental stage. I see a narcissism in antisocial behaviors as just really having not learned respect, responsibilities, how to hear the word no. being empathetic to others. And these are qualities of both a narcissist and a psychopath that you hear much more about a psychopath, but clinically we would call it an antisocial personality disorder, not a psychopath. But there are certain traits associated with antisocial personality that actually you can watch for if you're in a relationship or in a job or a boss with, or in your child. Like many other terms in the field of psychology, psychopath and sociopath are often used interchangeably. And it's easy to see why, since psychopath is really not the official term. It's antisocial personality, but it sounds like they're just antisocial, but it runs much deeper than that. Some of the most common signs of antisocial personality include socially irresponsible behavior, not having learned what responsible behavior is, disregarding or violating the rights of others. No one showed them what a personal boundary is or the boundaries of others. Inability to distinguish right from wrong. Again, learning no. Difficulty with showing remorse or empathy. Learning how to care about another human being or an animal. Tendency to lie often. They figured out how to get their needs met with manipulation. And manipulating and hurting others. It works. They get their needs met and what they want, and no one has stopped them. Hey, why not? It works. And if you don't have empathy, hey, I don't care. Reoccurring problems with the law. This becomes the big no. Law enforcement, courts, jail, a lot of times military service. But there's a general disregard towards safety and responsibility, kind of for themselves or others, but kind of their attitude. No one cares about me. Why should I care about them or myself? Truly, they are like little hurt children that have grown up now and left to their own devices to survive in what they consider an uncaring world. Where if you kind of combine the symptoms of a narcissist with the antisocial personality, here's about narcissist. That's where it really kind of gets scary, though. So a narcissist, an inflated sense of importance, a deep need for excessive attention and admiration, lack of empathy for others, often have troubled relationships. They're preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, ideal love. Maybe the corporate CEO or the TV stars believe they're special and unique and can only be understood by or should only associate with other special people of high status or institutions, politicians maybe. A need for excessive admiration, movie stars, and a sense of entitlement. I should have this. I'm special. Interpersonally exploitive behaviors, that really bad boss. Envy of others or belief that others are envious of them. Actually should be envious of them. They're pretty wonderful. A demonstration of arrogance or haughty behaviors or attitudes. When this boils down, says licensed therapist Rebecca Weiler, LMHC, is selfishness at the usually extreme expense of others, plus the inability to consider others' feelings as well. Again, no one teaching them what is appropriate behaviors or caring about others because no one really cares about them. No one is setting boundaries. Narcissistic personality disorder, like most mental health personality disorders, isn't black and white. Narcissist falls on a continuum, explains Beverly Hills family and relationship psychotherapist Dr. Fran Walfish, author of the Self-Aware Parent book. With just a few symptoms presented on this spectrum can be to a full-blown encompassing with destructive behaviors and symptoms. But make no mistake, they can be very dangerous. That charming way of seducing you, almost too good to be true, telling you what you want to hear. And as one therapist called it, love bombing you, but can quickly change if their fragile sense of themselves is hurt. They really can't tolerate that. They seek revenge and can be dangerous in a relationship, as we often see in domestic violence or even in corporate America, where one study found that 20% of CEOs have psychopathic tendency. They seek power and control and have learned how to manipulate people and things to bend to their needs. Seek help. If you are ever feeling threatened by a person in a relationship with them, leaving can be the most dangerous times, because that narcissist may feel that you have bruised their inflated sense of importance, or they feel abandoned and have no healthy coping skills to work with themselves. Because again, they just never learned them from their initial family or through school or any place else. And they may also just look for vulnerable people to control. And once you aren't that way anymore, they usually will seek to find someone else to control or see you as an object of that they are losing. And they just can't tolerate that and can do some really dangerous and crazy things. In January 2021, in a Facebook Live about after the insurrection on January 6th at the Capitol, I did do a Facebook Live about these tendencies and what to watch out for that you can look for. But we did see these in some of the behaviors in the white supremacists at the Capitol. No one was saying no to them, or they pushed past the Capitol Police. And we're finding out now maybe some of them were white supremacists themselves. 6 were just fired or put on administrative leave this week. And a past president that was supportive of these abusive behaviors, in my opinion. And no one was saying no. People are intimidated by this abuse of power and abusive power and control, just like the KKK did in the South. This is continuing right now, since we have barbed wire around our nation's Capitol building. What kind of brought this up for me for writing this and doing this Facebook Live this week was watching some Muscovy ducks, who are kind of multicolored ducks. Are kind of interesting looking, and then the size of a turkey, that some of them had made their home in my yard. When one of a new adolescent, I think he's adolescent duck, flew in and tried to take dominance over the older, well-established duck that had dominance over a female duck. And this new adolescent came to establish his dominance in this territory over this well-established duck. Well, they literally fought for 15 to 20 minutes on land and on the water to subjugate one or the other. And, and the established duck did win and absolutely said, no, that I am the boss. This is my girl, not yours. And then the other one, and he remained dominant, and the other one calmed down and said, okay, I understand the pecking order. And the smaller just girl duck couldn't do anything to protect herself. And she had to allow whoever won to dominate her. She just sat down and waited. She had zero power to do anything to stop this, and she understood her position in this pecking order. But this young stud did finally give in, and they do live together right now after setting these boundaries. So nature is also an example of saying no and how to keep order and boundaries. But it really made me start to think about racism and slavery and where this started. And are we our country based in kind of psychopathic, narcissistic tendencies? And has it continued that we see on our Capitol steps today? And if this is about really saying no and building a system around that says no to someone who is trying to exert their own power, independence, if they are not the right color to the ones in power and being subjugated by the ones in power, or a system that is set up to subjugate and say no? Question marks. I started to think about the slaves or Black Africans mostly, plucked out of their own environment, their home environment, put in chains, treated like subhumans, put in the hold of a ship, thrown scraps of food, and sold as things to work and build for their masters. Demoralized, completely subjugated, taking out of their home, away from their families, the way to break them, as a way to say the biggest no I think I've ever seen. Bring them to a new environment you've never experienced, thrown into a new way of life that your head must just keep spinning like a dream, like a nightmare, really. Put in a system that supports that no against you. You can't leave, you can't be free, and you cannot exert any rights unless you do say no to them and fight for freedom. And it seems to me we continue that fight for freedom, finally allowed to vote 100 years ago, but then that got subjugated once again to 1964, the voting rights, which has been taken away again. But a system built on fear of physical violence, if you stand up to it, having a system of no for most to be subjugated for the benefit of the few. What does this system sound like it's based on? Psychopathology and narcissism to the nth degree by mostly white men? A system that is still in place today that is showing itself to us all. As white people, I think we're realizing this on a level never before, but it's always been there, but has been there or against, I would say, for people of color almost forever. Right now, there are 100 legislative bills that are before state governments to restrict or make it harder for minorities to vote, to never have a voice. Can we say no to these legislatures? Yes, we can with our votes if we realize they're happening. I think this happens more in silence. We haven't talked about it. We don't see it. We don't want to see it. Is it time to stop this subjugation? And according to Mary Trump in her book, who is the niece of Donald Trump, wrote a book about her and his family. The title is Too Much and Never Enough. Just the title kind of explains this. No one ever said no to him, and he could never get enough power, control, and he has terrorized our families in his own. As a psychologist, Mary Trump really alluded to this in the Trump family that created the sociopath that she says spent 4 years as president, and that we have had to deal with it as a country, and really nobody, not even his Republican counterparts, would say no to him or even convict him of what looks like his responsibility in an insurrection. So what can we do for our children or learn from this? In my counseling practice that I have witnessed was that either direction can produce narcissists or psychopaths, either overindulging a child and never setting boundaries or never saying no or just giving into them and giving them what they want to shut them up, or being neglectful, emotionally abandoning them and never being emotionally available to them, left to their own devices, without anyone loving them enough to teach them what is appropriate boundaries in relationships, or what does it mean to care for another person, or a two-way street in a relationship, give and take, can lead to both narcissism and antisocial personality disorder or the creation of a psychopath. They are created. We need to learn and teach how to set good boundaries or what is appropriate social behaviors, how to say no and mean it without threats or abuse, to be consistent, follow through on what you say, stick to it for the good of your child and your family. Please, please, please seek help from a professional. Do not wait. If your school or your neighbors tell you your child is a bully, you are adding to a psychopath if you do nothing. And this is hard to hear, but there are more men than women that have this diagnosis. And technically, to be antisocial personality diagnosed, you have to be 18 years old, but some people will show these signs earlier, and it's called conduct disorder, and they may be even earlier as age 11. So we're talking grade school here. It is a chronic condition that can improve with age with boundaries, absolutely, in developing empathy. Watch how they treat their siblings, animals, but the mortality rate are higher in people with antisocial personality because of their behaviors, their unsafety, the way that they are kind of destructive. However, Dr. Miss Sand, a clinical director of Healthy Ways Counseling, says a true antisocial personality diagnosis is not made until the age of 18. For most people, the worst of the behaviors occur in late teens, throughout their 20s, he explains. But it can be apparent in grade school, on the playground, of a bully. To get a proper diagnosis, a mental health professional will conduct a full battery of a mental health profile. Though they will look at medical history. They got knocked on the head. I mean, it can be, some brain damage, that part of the brain. This full evaluation is a critical step to a diagnosis. That can be other comorbidities with other mental health disorders or addictive behaviors, depression, anxiety. And that's the way they're choosing to cope. Since a true antisocial personality diagnosis is delayed until the age 18, adolescents and teens that present earlier generally will get the diagnosis of conduct disorder or oppositional defiant disorder. Conduct disorder is more severe than oppositional defiant, and clinicians will look at how they act around people they know and don't know. Typically, somebody with oppositional defiant disorder is more likely to act oppositional or defiant with around their family members, teachers, or healthcare providers. If an adolescent or teen is showing an ongoing pattern of aggression towards others, they regularly make choices that are in opposition of the rules, social norms at home, school, with peers. A clinician may decide to get help quickly. And I would say the clinician, it would be the family that needs to get help quickly to a clinician, especially if the child is hurting animals. That's a real red flag, or setting fires. There's some real anger going on there, resentment, revenge. Like the diagnostic process, treating somebody with psychopathic traits that fall under the antisocial personality disorder diagnosis can be difficult. Typically, a healthcare provider will use a combination of psychotherapy, talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and medication. But there has to be a willingness on the families to consistency and some willingness with the client. And that's why I see the success rate very low with adults, because they blame others, do not see it as themselves, because I am wonderful. I have no problems. It's you that has the problem. That's why there really is, once they're past their teens or young adults, it's very hard to get consent from that person to get treated. They don't see it as a problem. But don't think that medication can work alone. Psychotherapy can help the person understand their diagnosis and how it impacts their lives and their relationships with others. That's when they're going to want to change. And they can work together to develop strategies that decrease the severity of the symptoms. If medication is part of the treatment plan, that they treat other mental conditions, generally as anxiety, depression, or symptoms of aggression. A lot of times aggression, explosive disorder, that a lot of times will need medication. The word psychopath is often misused, though, in the general public, and that's why it's important to demystify the term and explain the correct diagnosis and terminology to use when you are describing that particular behavior, since it's not official and it does go under antisocial personality disorder. But that's why and how I see this as a cautionary tale for mothers and fathers, that no is an important boundary. No is supposed to be used to understand right and wrong. No is a very powerful word that's not just used to they say like 100,000 times by the time they're 2 or 3. It's really something that you don't overuse. Same with an animal. You need to tell what they need to do, not just say no. What does that mean? What am I supposed to do then? Show them, teach them. This is what, redirect the behavior. This is what you need to be doing as a boundary so they can understand how to work within these social norms to the betterment of the whole, not of the individual only, but of the family. And as Americans, I think we have a lot of work to do and a lot of things to learn about the whole of our society instead of just individual practices. Right now, with this freezing temperatures in Texas, we're understanding that they, as looking as an individual state, not being part of any federal oversight or no one to say no to them or look at things that have been going on for 10 years in their state that values Lone Star, individualism, that now 30 people, an 11-year-old froze in his bed because there was nobody to say no to this state. That was their choice. And now, unfortunately, 14 million are without water and had been for 4 or 5 days. These are some of the consequences of no regulations, no looking at consequences and only saying yes to maybe an oil gas industry. This can be devastating and having devastating results on the whole. And, learning to be respectful of all people instead of just subjugating certain parts of our society. Practice using the word no with love and with the intention of showing love. Say it without any emotion, maybe even with it. Just a simple boundary. Nope, this is not okay. You need to go do this, please. No, that's okay. I understand you don't like it. That's okay. We as a family are going to learn this and do this now. Or you can give a choice. Or you can go to your room and be by yourself for the next hour until you understand really we mean business when we say no. This is the simple version. And if you can understand and use this as a simple version, it works in all situations. But teaching and learning it young till you can put them in their room is critical. And understanding this does not have to get emotional. It can be a non-emotional explanation. If you do need help, please reach out. For all of our sake, this is by no means a replacement for therapy or medical attention ever. Always reach out and take care of yourself and your family. If you are feeling like anybody you see, or friends, family, are going to hurt themselves or others, please call. There's somebody standing by at 1-800-273-8255, please, or call 911. And remember to share this all with love. So thank you for listening, and please support our podcast by rating, reviewing, and subscribing. Please share this with others that it could help them be a better parent. And remember to use and practice the skill today about saying no, to feel more joy. That can say no too. Nope, we're not going to do this, and we're all going to feel some joy and happiness, or we're not going to do it. That's a good no. Go to our website, anxietysimplified.net, for more on how to get a certified emotional support or psychiatric service dog today. They teach us love. All for now. Bye. And so please join us on Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern. For more on our Facebook Live, or go to ESA Evaluation 16 on Facebook, or anxietysimplified.net on Facebook for the anxiety site, or at our website, anxietysimplified.net, for more podcasts on ways and simplified ways to understand and to live a better, happy life with less anxiety. So, all for now, and I'll put in some explanations in Facebook for us right now on how to use this. So, everybody, be well.